Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.
Evening. England beat India in the third test at Headingley then to level up the 5-match series. What a ridiculous sport this is, Michael Vaughan.
Yeah, I don't know what was more surprising, the England turnaround or Ronaldo signing for United. I mean, looking like signing for City. The English Test team, I have to say, chappers, they are an incredible team to watch because you've got no clue what's going to arrive. This last few days, they've been absolutely magnificent.
And it sets things up perfectly for the rest of the series, Tuffers.
Yes, it does. I don't think it gets much better than this. As you say, two tests to go, points to prove, reputations at stake. There's a little bit of needle thrown in there as well. This series has already had it all, and there's more to come.
There really is. We'll look at a good test for England's top order. We'll talk Ollie Robinson as well, and Nat Sibber will join us later on to preview their T20 series with New Zealand.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show on 5 Live.
Philip,
I've just got to say something. It ruined my holiday. I had 5 days off for the first time in ages, and I was sitting around the pool and I had to keep running back to the room and watch the telly. I didn't get a tan or anything. I was sat in my room watching the test match. I was gutted, but it was brilliant.
I don't know if you've heard of these things called iPads, by which you can watch television on an iPad using something called Wi-Fi.
I know.
And then you could have got the sun as well, Phil.
I know.
Quite up with the modern
It took me a week to find out how to work it.
I've never had so many messages from you.
Well, it was exciting, Mike, wasn't it? I mean, it was fantastic.
I kept on messing you back. Get stuck into your margaritas. What you worried about?
I know. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
But your point that you said in the intro there, which is a good place for us to start, really, as an overview, is it doesn't get better than this. As a test series, it doesn't get better than this. No,
it doesn't. I mean, and also, it doesn't get better than that England performance, chappers. When you think about that last day at Lord's and it was doom and gloom, and let's be honest, after Lord's, many of us and many fans, many people that studied cricket just thought the wheels were off. We just thought that the England Test match team had just lost that kind of mentality to win the big moment, and they had to win that first session. So when Virat Kohli decided to bat first, I think first and foremost that was the best thing that happened, because Joe may say that he would have bowled, but I'm pretty sure he would have batted. And it proved to be a very good toss to have lost. It did enough. India made a lot of mistakes that we'd not seen at Trent Bridge, mistakes that we'd not seen at Lord's. Jimmy Anderson had it on a piece of rope. He just kind of put it wherever he wanted to and swung it either way. And India straight away were under the back foot, when they lost those 4 wickets in the first session. But England had to win. They had to arrive at Headingley with the mentality of desperation that they had to get back in the series. And I just looked at India, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but they didn't seem to have that. They didn't seem to have that desperation that we saw at Lord's on the last day, like we saw at Trent Bridge. And sometimes in a 5-match test series, it's tough, being completely on it all the time. Hour after hour, just be completely disciplined and dedicated to the cause. The great teams, the Aussies in the 90s, early 2000s, the West Indies, they could do that, but there's only a small few that can. And I just thought that India didn't arrive with the right mentality, and England had to win, and they did it brilliantly.
Yeah, I also think, Mike, that India thought that they might have seen off England at Lord's. They had probably the best at Trent Bridge. And I think that they thought, right, we've got this England side. We've roughed them up a bit. We've won the battle of the verbals a bit, and the rough and tough and the short pitch bowling and everything. Roughed up Jimmy Anderson, their main man. I think they might have turned up thinking we're going to do this, win the toss. And I'll make you right. As soon as that toss went up, and I heard in my room that they'd won it, and we're gonna go and have a bat, I thought to myself, oh crikey, this could be a run fest. And to roll them for 70 odd was just something special. To get yourself up from that, chappers, let me just tell you, because I've been in those positions quite a few times, when you're bullied, you're beaten soundly, and the wheels have come off, to get yourself back up in the space of a couple of 3 days is really tough. So I fair play to them, hats off to them.
But that's why it feels that it doesn't get better than this. The intensity that this series is being played in, and you know, the Verbals and the Needle, and they all play a little bit of that. But some of the bowling from both sides.
By the way,
different...
where are you? You in a dark. Where are you?
No, I'm where I normally am, but I just haven't put the light on, so I don't need that. I don't need the light. Just, you know, it gives it a slightly haunting
you've
feel.
You've got a white T-shirt on. It's great.
I know.
Put 50p in the meter.
So I'm sat in the dark doing this show, but it is, isn't it? It's the whole thing coming together. The ebbs and the flows. You know, the ups and the downs, the intensity, the verbals, the fact, actually, that in the main, both sides, apart from when they're in some very desperate spells, have looked like they're really enjoying it. I mean, they have looked like
it's a good series.
They are really loving it.
Yeah, and I think having that little bit of spice at Lords, it helps. You know, I look at that few days at Lords when it did get a bit heated, and I think both sets of players probably realised that was probably things said that was a bit over the top. Whether they had a discussion between Lords and Headingley, I'm not too sure. But I always think if you're going to talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. And I was really disappointed with India at Headingley because it had got heated this series. And again, great teams of the past. And I look at this Indian side, chappers, and I honestly think they have enough tools to be a great, great team. You know, they've got everything. They've got the pace, they've got the batting depth, they've got the spin options, they've got a captain that's, very driven and very, very good. We'll know in the next week or so how good this Indian side really is in terms of, I look at, that Aussie side, the Pakistan side of the early 90s, the West Indies side of the 80s, and I honestly think this Indian team have got enough to dominate. They've won in Australia, and this is the one part of the world that they've not won. The Virat Kohli teams in Test cricket have pretty much beaten everybody, but they've never come here and beaten England and going 1-0 up, and in such dramatic fashion that they went 1-0 up to then the few days later to perform like they did at Headingley. I'll be interested to see what India side arrive at the Oval. I'm sure they'll make changes. They need to, but I'll be very, very interested mentally because I've seen it from Indian sides over the last few years when they've come here and they've suddenly had a bit of a blip and it gets towards the end of the series. We've seen it, Phil, haven't we, with the Indian sides, that the ball swings around a bit and they go missing a little bit. And I'm just intrigued to see what India's side arrives at the Oval on Thursday.
Is there one thing in particular that impressed you the most about England's performance in the Test at Headingley? Or is it a whole variety of things?
I think everything. I mean, if you look at what we've criticised, batting, it's not been good enough for a while in Test cricket. Well, yes, they batted in a nice situation, having bowled India out for 78. So it is a lot easier when you do that. But that top three worked. The changes work. Hamid was excellent opening the batting. Rory Burns found his rhythm, and Milan just looked a class act going in at 3. Obviously, Joe Root's on a different planet to everyone at the minute, and he just looks like he's going to get 100, whatever the circumstance. So if he gets inside the first 10 overs, it looks like he's going to get 100. On this occasion, he got in the 63rd over. That's not been the case for a long, long time. The catching, England caught well. Again, that's been a criticism of the Test match team for a while, that they've not been taking the catches. Again, though, it's easier to take the catches when you're so far ahead of the game. It's harder taking the catches when there's that, that kind of knife edge situation in a Test match. It's amazing, the England Test match team, because you go from Lords thinking they've got absolutely no chance of winning this series and absolutely no chance of doing anything in Australia. You then go and perform like that at Headingley. You kind of go, wait a minute. They're now favourites to win this series, and you're finding someone like Ollie Robinson, who's tall, he's coming over the top, and you think, he could have a real impact in Australia. We have to be very careful. We have to understand that at the Oval it might be different again. But when you see a performance like that, you kind of go, come on, we're just crying out for consistency. That's all we need and want, really. We want another performance at the Oval. We want another one at Old Trafford, win the series, and I think it'll give everyone a massive boost going down under for the Ashes.
Yeah, what I saw that was different there, Mike, as well, was a rhythm and a tempo their game and a belief, because as you said, we both left Lords thinking, this is going to be really difficult, to get yourself up for this. But they just went out there with a really sort of a really good rhythm to everything, as you say, and that it was almost the perfect test match. Bowl them out cheaply, go out there, score big runs, and then the other team fight back, and you show some steel, to sort of weather that storm, sit in, come in the morning and blow them away. Absolute job done. I mean, it just is textbook.
9.75 I gave it. I gave it 10 out of 10, but then I thought, wait a minute, there was a little bit of a vulnerability in that engine room, but they were so far ahead of the game. You look at Johnny Bairstow got in with 29, Josh Butler just looks a bit out of sync. He's obviously not going to play at the Oval, and Moeen Ali didn't get so many runs. So I wanted to give it 10 out of 10, but I thought, wait a minute, that little kind of trio didn't quite fire with the bat, so I couldn't quite give it a 10.
Nothing's ever a 10. Nothing's a 10.
Nothing.
Let's talk more about the batting then. What was there a difference in David Malan being in his game in what you saw from the David Malan who was in the Test team 3 years ago?
Well, he looks like a chap who knows, an experienced number three who came in there, understood his game and went about it. There again, I use them words, tempo and rhythm again. Look to go out there, play his shots, look to get on top of the bowling, play himself in, play his shots, rotate strike and then start hitting the bad balls for four. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to put good bowling attacks back under pressure, because if you don't do that, they're all over you like a rash. And I think that him, and I like the way that Hamid and Burns played as well, but I think with him in that top three as it stands now, it just looks a better top three. Simple as that. It looks a more attacking, looks a more sort of experienced top three. Okay, I know Hamid's the youngster in there, but it just looks like a top three that can go out there and score your runs against anyone at a good lick, Phil, and put under pressure.
Yeah, I think what's happened with Malan since the last time was in the Test arena. You've got to look back at his Test career to date. I mean, he does average 42 in Australia. Yeah. So his record in Australia throughout the Ashes series was actually got a tremendous 100 at Perth, and he snicked off a few times in English conditions. And since then, he's been an outstanding player in T20 cricket. So he's got the international badge of honour. He believes he's an international cricketer. All right, it's a different format. And I looked at him arriving and I just thought, wait a minute, he just looks like he belongs. And I think that's himself telling himself that, and the belief element of what he's saying to himself, that he believes that he's an international cricketer. So I think it is a good move that England have put in there. Look, he's never going to get a better chance, is he, when you go out to bat and you're already 50 ahead of the opposition before you've taken guard.
As we've spoken about before, Michael, the luck sometimes of how you come back into a side or make your debut, or the game situation when you come out to bat, all plays a part.
That's why I look at it for India this week. If they arrive at the Oval and don't do much to their team, you're playing into England's hands. What did India want to see at Headland this week? They wanted to see Dom Sibley. Of course they did, because they've got the wool over his eyes. They wanted to see Dom Sibley. They wanted to see, the same kind of combinations. England made the changes and it's worked. And now India, they've got to go and scratch their heads and go, okay. I mean, how they've not played R. Ashwin, I'll never know. Over 400 Test wickets, 5 Tests, 100, averaging around 20. It's remarkable that they've gone in with these 4 rabbits at 8, 9, 10, 11. And it just does not work. I'm sorry, it does not work in Test cricket. So they'll go with R. Ashwin. I believe they need to change the batting lineup as well. I think they need to throw in someone else. I think Ajinkya Rahane, in his last 48 Tests, he's averaged 33. In his last 48 Tests, 33, and on this tour he's just looking all at sea. Pujara found a bit of rhythm in the second innings, but again, I think England would be absolutely delighted if India arrived with the same top 7. I think they'd be Jimmy Anderson, Ollie Robinson, be like, oh, thank you, we'll bowl to that lot yet again, because I think both batting lineups have proved that they're vulnerable. But England just seemed to have a bit more steel. I don't know. It just looked a little bit better. It looks longer. It looks more experienced with Malan at 3. It just looks a better unit with Malan back in there.
Yeah, and it did make me laugh also after that Lord's Test match. Virat Kohli coming out and sort of saying, "Oh well, I hear some of the pundits think that our tail can't bat." Well, I still think that.
Well, they can't.
No. They can't.
They can't. Their average is saying that they average 4.
Yeah, they got away with it at Lords and they slogged a few to the boundary. England had an absolute brain fade, you know what I mean? But it was then just a funny little thing that I heard him say that, you know what I mean? Oh, well, I have faith in it. I know our tail. And their tail, as you say, Mike, from 8 down, they're blown away. They should be blown away. And I can't believe, as you say, Ravi Ashwin not to be sitting up there with his shorts and his T-shirt on, watching 3 Test matches. Unbelievable. The England batsmen will be absolutely overjoyed.
Yeah, you get a little sense that there's this is quite a big 2 Test matches for Virat Kohli. Ooh, that's what you're feeling. Yeah. You're feeling that it's a real big. You know, he's done well with the Indian side.
Virat Kohli, the captain, or Virat Kohli, the individual batter?
Yeah, I think it's a big 2 Tests for Virat, the captain.
Right.
You know, you look at what happened in Australia. He was back home, and they won over there, and having gone 1-0 up in the series here, it should have been 2. They should have won at Trent Bridge. I think he would. His position's not under threat, but I think he is a leader of quality. Will want to win this series and would expect to win this series against this England side with what he's got. And if he doesn't, I think he'll come under quite a lot of criticism from people back home in India.
But criticism that he can ride out.
Well, yeah, yes, look, chaps, there's whispers about the one-day captaincy. That there's a few would feel that Rohit Sharma would be better suited. You only have to look at India's white ball success of late. It's not really had much success. Didn't do anything here in the World Cup. The T20 success has gone missing. So I think this T20 World Cup will be big for the white ball team. Obviously, Virat will captain that. But if that doesn't go the way that he would want and the team would want, you know, I do think pressure will start to build. He's got such a quality group of players. I mean, these are high class players that, you know, I think they should win over here. With what they've got in their team, the Indian side should be beating this England Test match team. All right, I think England will be stronger this week if Wokes is back in there, but when you've got no Jofra Archer, no Ben Stokes, Chris Wokes has not played yet, I think there's a big core of this England senior team that's not been in. They're not there. So if I was Virat Kohli in India, I'd be expecting to win this series.
But what happened at Headingley wasn't necessarily. I mean, how much say Virat has in selection, that might have some part in criticising Virat Kohli. But as soon as they were all out for 70 odd, I mean, Kohli was behind he was snookered, wasn't he, at that stage?
Yeah. I think also he'll be very frustrated that he hasn't got a big score yet.
Yeah.
Simple as that, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, he got a 50 at Headingley and then straight away nicked off and didn't look a 1,000,000%. You know, Joe Root has gone out there and it is a little bit of a battle of the captains, as it always is, you know, when you're in these series and what have you. And at the moment, Joe Root is putting him in the shade with the bat. Forget the captaincy and about how he's running things and selection. With the bat, he hasn't delivered. Simple as that. And he came over here sort of like saying, listen, this is going to be my sort of like, this is where I'm going to get on top of Jimmy Anderson and the swinging ball and blah, 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 blah. And he hasn't delivered like that. So I can see his frustration, and I think it's sort of coming out in the way he's captaining the side as well.
Yeah, and also some of the things he's been saying. I mean, he said after Lords, his team never start these confrontations. Well, they seem to be involved in quite a few. You know, it's just I just watch Virat, and he's such a bundle of energy, and he's great to watch. He really is. But I'm with Phil. I think it's the runs. You know, if you're not getting the runs and the huge, you know, he's not got an international 100 now for over 2 years. He's averaging around 20 in that period in Test match cricket. For a player of that quality, that is a long, long time. I mean, a year, you kind of go, okay. And they won't have played as many games because of the times we're in. But 2 years with that, an international century, that is a lot of a time for a great, great player. And I just wonder whether it's just eking away at him that, you know, his team have not... You mentioned, you know, he can't do anything about getting bowled out for 78. Absolutely, but you're the captain. You know, when your team play like they did, and they played with... You know, they'll say, even with the ball in hand, chappers, they got nothing out of that surface. No. You know, they didn't get the seam or the swing. They were just flat. I mean, he opened the bowling with Ishant Sharma.
Yeah, and that is on him. And that is on him, obviously.
Of course it is. I honestly think it's like managers in football. When you lose, you know, it's you. You're the manager and you're the captain of that team. And, you know, you don't mind losing in any sport as long as your team look like they're really dedicated, disciplined and up for the fight. I watched an Indian side at Headingley. I don't know what was missing. It just didn't seem to have any backbone. And it just felt like India, from being bowled out for 78, they knew they were going to lose. Give the set away and they'll try and come back at the Oval.
I just want to go back to the batting. We'll do the bowling a little bit later on. But I thought it was quite interesting what you said when talking about Malan, Phil, when you talked about him attacking. And that's one of the things that we didn't see in this test, is that England's top order getting mired in trying to survive whilst forgetting to score runs. And maybe that was the game. Yeah, but maybe that was the game situation. Maybe that's them being a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, a little bit more relaxed, but also you've got to have the shots in your locker to then go to. You know, you've got to get yourself in. You've got to earn the right to go and score runs. And we always bang on about it. Those first 20 balls in Test match cricket, you've got to survive and use your technique. But then once you get over that, you've got to start putting it back to the bowlers. And he can do that. I mean, we've seen it in the white ball game as well. Beautiful cover drives, great off the back foot, can cut and pull. You know, and anything that's offline as a bowler, you love bowling at people who've only got a couple of shots in the locker, because you just don't bowl those shots and they go nowhere. He has the ability to make you bowl where, you know, you don't want to. And, you know, some of his shots and his tempo, looking for runs, running between the wicket. I think the openers as well dropped and ran really well. I think Hamid got a little bit bogged down, didn't he, that second day, and couldn't quite turn over strike and then nicked off. And that's what we were saying earlier. You've got to have the ability to counter-punch, and he can counter-punch. He has got the shots. He's a silky smooth player, David Malan. He has been, you know, for years now. I don't really know why he got sort of jettisoned so early, really. He really, you know, is a player that can, at number 3, do some serious damage. And if it's his, he'll be absolutely spewing to nick off down the leg side. You know, he was eyeing up 100 there all day long.
Hamid was really interesting, actually, after the first innings, in one of his interviews on the big difference, and you will understand this, Michael, and you'll be able to explain it to us. The big difference when you are an opener having to go in at number 3, as he had to at Lord's.
I think it's if you get in early, it's no difference. And I guess he got in quite quickly. But even if you're waiting around for 10 overs, it feels like a lifetime. If your job has always been to get in the dressing rooms, put your pads on, and walk out there with a partner, which is what Hasib has done pretty much throughout his career, it is a big difference. So he's got his position. I thought he played beautifully in the first afternoon when he went out there, and again it was Ishant Sharma's first over, and he cut one to the boundary, and it was kind of the murmuring around them. Oh, there's a cut shot. We haven't seen one of those for a long while in the Test team. You know, a bowler bowling an iffy ball in the first over, boom, straight away a counter punch. It was fantastic to see. Again, he's a young player learning, so the next day he came out there and they bounced him. They bowled short to him, and they tried to aim for his left shoulder. And he went 29 balls without scoring, and then he was out. You know, so there's a little bit of a lesson there that he's got to try and find that tempo the next day when they try one or two little tactics that are different to what you've seen before. Don't be surprised if India do the same straight away to Hamid on Thursday, bounce him. You know, go short. He likes to get on this front foot. He's got a most immaculate forward defence. We don't see too many forward defences, and it's immaculate with great balance. But I don't think many quicks will be, you know, just floating, you know, the ball up there to him to play that big forward defence. So he'll have to, you know, work a way and a method. But to see an opening partnership put on 100 and play with just, again, the word's temper, they just played nicely, nicking those singles and just looked busy. And that's, you know, it's the message that you kind of send to anyone playing Test match cricket is, it's a long game, but you've still got to be busy. You've still got to look to score.
Phil?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think Rory Burns looked to be back in form as well. He played nicely. And then, you know, and it just sets up then Joe Root. I mean, Joe Root was just... we can't keep talking. I know you said you can't keep talking about him. But,
we have to here. We have to.
Well, we do.
You know.
He's beating Mike's records. I think Mike said the only thing he hasn't nicked off him is his wife earlier on or something, wasn't it? He's nicking all your records.
He has 27 Test wins as captain. So that means he's gone clear of Michael on 26. Yeah. He's level with Michael and Dennis Compton for centuries in a calendar year for an English
halfway
batsman.
Through the year.
Halfway through the year. The world record is 9 for Mohammed Yusuf. And if the Ashes goes ahead, he's got 5 more tests in this calendar year.
I mean, we're looking at. I mean, we're seeing some great players. You know, you're looking at Jimmy Anderson, Joe Root, Virat Kohli. You know, the great players that are going to be talked about as great players forever. You know, that they're in that kind of echelons of players. Joe he got to 6 at Headingley, and I remember turning something. He'll get 100. He got to 6. Because you could see the pitch was playing perfectly. I'm staggered that India haven't done anything different. I'm staggered that they keep bowling into this kind of 4th stump length that he just hangs back to and rotates it. He kind of punches it through the offside, then he come a bit straight and he works it on the onside. 8%, I mean, he's got over 500 runs in the series. 8% of them have come in the V down the ground. So surely as a bowling unit, Phil, you go, okay, we know where he's looking to score. We have to bowl a good length to... Pretty much every player is that kind of 6 metre length. But to Joe Root, I think you've got to bowl fuller. You've got to get it another yard fuller to him to try and say, come on, we'll bring you forward. And if he gets 100, he probably would. If he gets one going down the ground, he gets 60% of his runs down the ground, you go, at least you've tried something different. But, you know, it's been copy and paste for 3 test matches. You know, he's played the same way with the same tempo in India, just haven't had any answers. That's why our Ashwin has to play, because at least... he'll have an off-spin and a world-class performer, someone just slightly different to have a look at on Thursday.
Yeah, and he's a great player as spin as well. But as you say, Ashwin does just give them that little bit of mystery, that little bit of something that, as you say, Joe Root comes out there in his normal sort of tempo, knocking it around, looking busy, and then boom, there's an absolute beauty that does something and he's gone. At the moment, he just looks booked in for bed and breakfast for 100 every time. He has played... the best I've seen anyone play. I mean, I saw that knock he played up at Trent Bridge, and I thought it was one of the best knocks I've ever seen. And they just keep getting better and better. Absolutely stupendous.
It must be an amazing feeling, Michael, when you are in that groove. But also because sorry, Phil. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, I mean, I could start with you, Phil, on this if you want. I mean, it must be an amazing feeling when you're in that groove with your batting, where you just know there's no fault to it, and runs are there for you every single time you go to the crease, Phil.
Yes, Michael. I can answer that actually, chappers, because I got 67 not out against Worcester one sunny Saturday afternoon at Lord's, and you're right. Every time, everything was just hitting the middle of the bat. It was amazing, Michael.
I think what we're seeing is, someone who's just got so much belief in everything, whether it's the technical side, the mentality side. I had it once. I think Joe's had it 2 or 3 times. He's not got to this kind of level in terms of the runs of hundreds, but we've seen Joe Root in golden periods before. Yeah. You know, he's got that many test match runs. He's bound to have 1 or 2 periods that everything seems to come off the middle of the bat. But, you know, I remember in 2002, and every innings was the same. You just felt so nervous. And you kind of had the same processes. You take your guard and you look around. And in Test match cricket, when you're facing the same bowlers game after game, you know, you take your guard and you look around and you go, oh, I saw this last week. And it takes you only a few balls and it takes you to get to 10 or 15 and you go, here we go again. Whereas when you're not in that kind of mindset and that kind of groove, you don't have that same feelings. And I think Joe's taking guard, and of course he'll be nervous and he'll know that he's got to get his feet going, he's got to kind of focus on the ball, but I reckon very quickly in every innings he knows. He knows that he's back because, as I said, India have not offered a different field setting, a different angle change. There's nothing that he's seen at Headingley that he's not seen at Lord's, that he's not seen at Trent Bridge. That's why they have to change angles. But you're seeing a player that, you know, if you can just create a DVD of what he's played this year against quicks, against the spin, and you just passed it around all kids that are trying to play the game, just say, please, just try and emulate what he's doing because everything about his game is perfect.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Mike, and as you say, you know better than me. I don't think he looks nervous. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's the butterflies and what have you as you're walking out there and the adrenaline's up and the heart rate's pumping. But I make you right. I bet he's thinking to himself, well, if I just get to me 20 balls here, I've got another 100 here.
But
you know
is it sweeter for him? Because he has tinkered, hasn't he? In the past, he has tinkered with his batting. And look, he's not unusual by any means of a lot of professional sports people in a whole variety of sports try and change things and maybe sometimes try and fix things that aren't broke.
Yeah, and again, I'd send him, a message to him, and I will do it at the end of this. Do not change anything going to Australia.
Yeah.
Because he has in the past, he's gone with a bigger trigger. He's felt that he's got to get more forward because they might bowl fuller. If there's one area in the world that you can hang back as far as you want, it's Australia. Australia's the perfect wickets that he will be playing on for his game. That kind of ball always comes through about hip high. He's got a great game around the hip high ball because he can punch it through the offside. He's got that little flick in the onside that I've mentioned. He doesn't need to change anything in his game or his mindset to go to Australia and have a huge amount of success. And I guess that's the one feather in his cap is Australia. His record in Australia is not as good as some of the other parts of the world. And I think he's probably tinkered a bit too much when he's gone to Australia. He doesn't have to just go and do exactly the same, plug himself in. Whatever he's thinking at the minute, just go and continue to do that. He will have a game or two where he doesn't get 100. I'm sure he's only a human being, but he doesn't have to tinker. He just needs to keep producing the same movement that he has done. He's in fine form.
We'll talk about the men's bowling a little bit later on, but let's talk about the women next. They begin their T20 series with New Zealand on Wednesday in Chelmsford. You can watch it on BBC Two. You can listen to it on Sports Extra. There's then a 5-match 50-over series against the same opponents. Delighted to say England's Nat Siver joins myself, Phil, and Michael. Evening, Nat.
Evening, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. We're just talking about those very special moments that you have to embrace when your game is in its sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you. And yeah, I mean, what a place to be in. I don't know if I have really experienced that yet, but yeah, hopefully someday soon.
But that's the problem now, that maybe you could very well have done, and yet there's this constant search for perfection which might not exist in sport, and therefore you start tinkering with things and then you lose that sweet spot that you were in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why sports people are mostly perfectionists, aren't they? And yourself can be your own worst enemy, really. When you think you need to change something, when you don't, there was no need to. Yeah, it is a funny paradox, really, isn't it?
It really is. Where are the England women at then? Would you say with their white ball game going into the T20s and the 50-over series?
Well, I think we're in a good place. We've obviously come off the back of the 100, which is obviously slightly different to T20, but I think everyone in the squad had a very good series, and we almost had two call-ups, but unfortunately they're isolating at the moment. But yeah, girls who were able to put in performances on the big stage in the 100 in front of crowds, in front of the TV was brilliant. We always want to challenge ourselves against the best in the world, obviously, and we probably don't have as good a record against Australia as we would like to in the last couple of years. But yeah, that's always the target.
Nat Tuffers here. How do you see that 100 sort of impacting women's cricket? It was a great watch. Everyone really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was massive. I think that level of investment is something that we haven't seen for the women's game before in England, I guess. And just hopefully people who came to watch obviously understand that watching the women's game is slightly different to watching the men's game, but it's cricket, and I mean they've just watched cricket for 5 weeks at massive stadiums, and yeah, hopefully those people can follow us around a little bit and keep that momentum going that we had during the 100.
Nat Vaughan here. Alex Hartley worked with us throughout the 100, obviously as well as playing. She was great value. She was trying to campaign to get a women's international at the Oval on a Friday night. rather than play at some of the outer grounds, if you like, and I'm sure you'll get great support there. But she really feels that the women's game needs that profile of a big sellout crowd at the Oval. I'm absolutely with her. You girls would love to play in front of 25,000, wouldn't you? Absolutely.
I mean, the times that we have played in front of crowds that are full capacity and really loud as well, it's been amazing. I mean, some of the best times that I've had on the pitch, really, going back to the World Cup in 2017, we played out in front of sold-out Lords, and just that energy. I mean, I'd love to play in front of that every time I played international cricket. That would be amazing, yeah.
I'm assuming that the reason, maybe why, you're not on here to talk about how grounds are chosen, but this schedule, grounds-wise, would have been booked up, obviously, before the 100. But now you would hope that it has given the ECB food for thought when looking at venues for future tours over here, that they can look for other venues.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I think schedules booked, 3 years in advance or something. But yeah, I mean, we'd love to play at bigger grounds, at the Test match venues that, obviously, when you're watching the boys play, there's so much coverage on how great it is to play in front of the Western Terrace, and just crowds like that, really. And yeah, to share that same experience would be brilliant.
The one thing that came through from quite a lot of the women's teams at the 100, not necessarily for the international players who'd experienced the big stage before, but for those below the international the international level, who hadn't played international cricket, who hadn't experienced big crowds, TV cameras, pre-match interviews, post-match interviews, that actually it took a bit of time to get used to all of that attention. But the more now this tournament progresses and the more they do get used to that attention, the more that will benefit England at international level.
Definitely. I mean, that's why we've been crying out for a tournament like this in England, really. And with our regional setup as it is now, there's no reason why, there's going to be huge squads of girls that can be in the England side, be in the 11 at any time, really. That exposure is... Learning about how to deal with that exposure is second to none, really, in terms of development. I mean, it's not just about skill, is it? It's about coping with everything else that goes with it.
And now I've heard Heather Knight talk today about the pool of players that she's now talking about because of the 100. Yeah. The amount of players that have put themselves in the international shot window because of that tournament. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just giving the exposure under pressure, and all of a sudden your pool grows and you start to have selection meetings where you have to disappoint rather than trying to scratch around to try and find your team. That's what it's about, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's vitally important, any tournaments like this. I mean, I've obviously had the chance to play in Australia and a little bit in India as well, and just seeing the Aussies pick, a random 3 people or something from the Big Bash who've had brilliant seasons, and then it becomes more about who's in form. You're not just picking, players with the highest skill level. It's all about form as well, and scoring runs and taking wickets.
Heather Knight also said in a press conference, and that the 2017 World Cup win was a missed opportunity in terms of building momentum. Whilst you want to capitalise on the opportunity, actually winning cricket matches is the most important thing. You're not there to save the game, are you?
No, exactly. I mean, we've at the end of the day, we've got to do our job, win games for our country and for England. But yeah, I mean that World Cup was really special, and obviously to have it in England was brilliant. But yeah, we sort of lost our way a little bit, probably the year after, and then obviously with COVID as well, it was a bit tricky. But a tournament like the 100 and how well it did, I don't know if people expected it to reach the audience it did, or have the, I guess, impact that it did. But yeah, I guess this is our second chance a little bit.
Yeah, it looked great fun to play in that 100. Well, obviously, it was.
It was.
Yeah. Why was that?
Yeah. I guess obviously they marketed it as fun, exciting, quick, explosive and all of this, but as a captain, it felt very fast.
Let me just ask you a final one then on New Zealand and their threat in these series.
Yeah, we've obviously had some good tussles with them in the last few years. They were missing their ex-captain or one of their big players, Susie Bates, in the last series that we played against them. So they've had time to reflect on that and I guess come up with something different. They've obviously got their big players and experienced players that we know that they can take a game away from us. But yeah, it'll be an exciting series. We've had some brilliant matches against them. We're looking forward to get going.
Good luck. Wish you well. Thanks for coming on this evening. We got there in the end.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you. That's Siva on Tuffers and Vaughan. And that is look, we've spent a lot of time on the 100 and certainly promoted it from the big positive effect it had on the women's game. But just that experience to greater pressure, Michael, and Phil, is the big thing that came through for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex Capsey, Mike. Alex Capsey, your favourite.
My favourite. She's missed out. Get her in. It's not going to be long. It's not going to be long before she's playing international cricket. She was fantastic. You're just looking at the pressure. Go back to that final. It was an incredible final, really. It wasn't the tight game that I think we all were expecting. The Southern Brave were clear favourites. And then all of a sudden, the Invincibles, from the Eliminator win on the Friday to go to Lords and then just blow them away. It was, that second one, Van der Kerk put herself at second slip. Yeah. And then the next ball, the outside edge was found. That was the tactical move of the whole tournament for me.
Yeah, no, it was great. And you're right, Chab. It was great to see some of the, they're not so recognisable names just coming through. And as you say, Alex Capsey, I think her first shot in the 100, she ran down the wicket and straight back over mid-off, didn't she? And it was just like, oh, well, this is fantastic.
Let's go back to the men then, and we've spoken about the batting. As far as the bowling is concerned, I was on air on Saturday and made this point to Jonathan Agnew, bearing in mind how wayward they had been at Lords, Michael. The fact that they were so disciplined on that Saturday morning with the new ball, they didn't go chasing it. They just they did more than let it happen, but they stuck to line and length and did what they needed to do, rather than that horrific hour or so that we saw at Lords.
Yeah, you speak to any batters that have played a bit at Test match level, there's too much talk of this intimidation of the short stuff. The hardest and the worst intimidation of when you've got a group of seamers that are hammering length consistently and you can't get away. You don't get any free little flicks on the onside. You don't get any short wide ones to cut away. You've just got to be challenged all the time on that fourth stump. And England delivered that. I think they'd have sat down after Lords. They'd have arrived in Leeds and probably sat down as a group and said, come on, we got it wrong. They got it completely wrong at Lords. What we're going to do from here on in, because that's gone. That's kind of been part now. We can't change that. And I reckon from now on in, we'll just see relentless line and length, from the likes of Anderson. I'll say about Ollie Robinson, I've not seen a better bowler arrive in an England Test jersey inside 4 Test matches. If you can name me one, bear in mind the first 4 Tests.
Yes, yeah.
Stuart Broad was a young whippersnapper making his debut in Sri Lanka. Very tough. Jimmy Anderson back in the day was nowhere near what he is now. But inside 4 games, Jofra Archer, Jofra came onto the scene and was great, but inside 4 games, I don't think I've seen a better seam bowler than we're seeing in Ollie Robinson. What I want to see from Ollie now is overseas, when it's hot, can he do a similar kind of thing with a different ball? Can he be as consistent with the Kookaburra ball as we're seeing with the Dukes, who won't get the swing in the seam, but can he be relentless in his lines and lengths? And can he bowl 22 overs a day when it's 90 degrees? That's what I'm looking at. Can he do that overseas? But I've not seen a better one, Phil, inside 4 games. If you've got a name, please tell me, but in my time, he is the best I've seen over the first 4 games he's played. Yeah, no, top draw, as you said, bangs that sort of like good length, just short of a length outside that off stump, height, and I was really impressed with his skills. He got that in-swinger going beautifully as well, and he just has that ability
to make your push and prod around that sort of like off stump and fourth stump, because you're not quite sure whether it's going to tail back into you. You're not quite sure whether it's just going to, with that bounce and sort of carry and just sort of like go away from the outside edge. I think he's got all the tools. And I was really impressed with Craig Overton, actually, Mike, as well. I thought he then was a really good choice, just to give that, we got it wrong at Lords. Let's just sort of like hammer away and give them nothing and let that wicket and the ball do it.
I'll give you a geeky stat. Overton and Ollie Robinson combined, it's the highest release point combination in the world game.
Is it?
Yeah, England have got the highest release point bowlers in the world game. So it's all about height. They're going to win everything.
Okay, then perhaps we should get some basketball players to take up seam bowling.
They've always fancied height, England, haven't they, when they've gone to Australia? Ollie Robinson, I don't know if you saw his interview after the game, and he came out with a comment about wobble seam. And they asked him about he said, Jimmy Anderson taught it me a few days ago. He said, and I produced it in the match. So if he can pick up skill like that and produce it under pressure in the test, usually if you're changing a bit of skill or trying to, kind of improve on your game with a bit of skill, it takes a bit of time for you to have trust in it to go out in the middle and produce that skill under pressure. Well, he did it at Headingley. He is a natural. He's an absolute natural bowler. Wonderful to watch. Very similar to a Josh Hazlewood. I think they're two very similar bowlers. Obviously, Hazlewood's played a lot longer, and you can't really put Ollie in that category. But in terms of the run-up and everything that he delivers, very similar. As I said, I just need to see him for another year or so when it gets a little bit tougher overseas to see whether he's the real deal. But so far, what I've seen in English conditions with the Duke, he's right up there.
But should bowl well in Aussie.
The question I also asked on Saturday then is not necessarily in Australia, but in English conditions at the moment. When you look at all the bowlers that are available, it's Anderson, Robinson, and then two others out of the. But Robinson and Anderson are the ones that are inked, and everybody else is fighting for the other places.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly think that is absolutely right, and Stuart Broad is one of the greats. Yeah, he probably wouldn't get the new ball if he was in this team now because of the, if Stuart Broad was playing at the Oval on Thursday, coming back in, Chris Wokes will do. You would think Chris will come back in and play. I don't think Stuart Broad would demand that new ball. I haven't seen what Ollie Robinson's produced over the last few Test matches. That's how well he's. And there's been times this summer, chappers. And Jimmy will be the first to admit this as well, that Joe Root's turned to Ollie Robinson. When he's desperately needs something to happen and a wicket to be taken, he's turned to Ollie Robinson. That's how big an impact he's had on the England Test match team on the field so far.
Yeah, and Ollie Robinson, as you said, he's turned to him, but like sometimes you sort of like give the ball to Mark Wood, he's going to come steaming in and his pace and his fire and sort of bounce and short balls, that gets you a wicket sometimes as well if things are flat. But he's got everything, Ollie Robinson, at the moment. You throw him the ball to go at 2 and over, but also he has the ability to then actually come in and get you that wicket as well. But by doing it, at 2 and over instead of actually having to give a few runs away. So he's
small margins, Phil, and this is the only ounce of criticism I can throw at Ollie so far in his 4 tests. He dropped around 9 miles an hour at Lords for a period, and he looked innocuous. Yeah. He just looked like he was floating down there. When he's at 82 plus 83, he just gets that little zip off the surface, that little oof. So he has to keep his paces up to that 83 plus, and that's why I say overseas it's a lot more difficult when it's hot and it's harder. So we'll have to wait and see.
5 Live Tennis will be here from 10 o'clock. Let's just nip to David Law,
where it's 1-1 between Stefanos Tsitsipas and Andy Murray now. Murray had 2 set points to take a 2-set lead. He couldn't take them. He's played brilliantly, but he's just been reeled back in by the 3rd seed. It's 1-1.
So Wokes comes in and what? Sam Curran drops out? Michael?
Yeah, I think so. I think what Chris Silverwood and Joe Root will have done is I'm sure they would have had a little bit of a party on Saturday. That have got down to London just to see how everyone is, how all the bowlers are. There was a few little niggles. I saw the physio looking at Ollie Robinson. I saw the physio looking at Craig Overton. But I would think if they've all arrived down in London and are fresh and ready to go again, I think there'll just be one change. I think Wokes will probably come in for Sam Curran.
And there'll be no Joss Butler, of course.
No. That's an interesting one, Chappers. I mean, completely understand his position. Whispers that he won't go to the Ashes.
Yeah.
So I think
there's
whatever
whispers
happens,
around a few there, isn't there, as well?
Yeah. But whatever happens at the Oval, I don't think he can come back in and play the Old Trafford game, because surely you want to go with your wicket-keeper batter that will be playing in the Ashes.
If he's confirmed by then that he's not going.
Yeah.
So do
I
you
would
give
think
the gloves straight to Bairstow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple as.
Okay, so Bairstow does that. Billings is in the squad as cover. So who's coming in to replace Butler then, Michael?
Ollie Pope will probably play. There was a little bit of me thinking the other day, wouldn't it have been a chance to have a look at Liam Livingstone?
Right.
What? Just to come in and get 90 off of 30 at number 7?
I'm just saying, Phil, look at his first-class record.
I know.
He averages 40. He averages 40 in first-class cricket, so he's been categorised as this striker. He's probably the best striker in the world as we speak, but he can play a bit. Yeah. And if you're looking at your Test match team, and if you're looking at a top 5 that we've seen, Burns, Hamid, Malan, Root, and then you've got Ben Stokes who'll come back in, I would think, at number 5. Yeah. So then there's Johnny Bairstow at 7.
Yeah.
So you've got a 6. And I want to keep Moeen Ali at 8, because I just think he offers a great package. So you've got Moeen Ali. So you've got this number 6 available that could... Ollie Pope's a good player, but I don't know. I look at Liam Livingstone and what I see. He has got swagger. And to play against the Australians in Australia, you need a bit of swagger.
You're
right. But also, Phil, if you go right back to the start and talking about Milan, Livingstone has that international bounce from what he's done in an England shirt already.
He's confident.
And he will attack if the ball requires him to attack.
Well, it's almost like the job that Joss Butler's looking to do anyway, who is that sort of counter puncher coming in lower order, to try and get those sort of quick runs and put the attack back onto the opposition. Livingstone can do the job. It's not a bad shout, Mike, to be honest with you. I know who I'd rather bowl at. I know who I'd rather bowl at out of Ollie Pope and Liam Livingstone.
Yeah. I was just thinking the other day, and I just thought, with the way that he plays and his swag, he bowls a bit of off spin, leg spin. He's an incredible fielder. They've not won enough games to just have a luxury player, but he averages 39.9 in first class cricket.
No mug in the world.
No, he's not. Some of these players are averaging 34, 35 in first class cricket and batting at the top of the order. Yeah. So I just look at someone like Liam Livingstone, and if I was England, I'd be taking him to the Ashes.
Yeah. Because he's not going to shirk it, is he? He's not going to be nervous.
And he's going to look him in the eye. He's played a lot of Big Bash cricket in Australia. He knows all the players. He's not going to be afraid of any one of them. Look, whether his game's good enough, we'd have to wait and see. But you remember he was part of the Test match team to New Zealand a couple of years ago. So they've had thoughts of him in Test match cricket before. I think I'd have thrown him in there, I think.